The first formal presentation is from a conference regular. He's online. I've seen him earlier, Luke Menzies from Menzies Law. Luke will be giving us his employment law update.
Thank you, Tim. Bear with me a second, I'll get the old slideshow going. Well, it's great to see you all, and even a slightly different format. Hopefully I will stick to time. In fact, you brought me in the middle too early, Tim, so that's absolutely fine. I'm ready. Employment law update in 5 minutes. I mean, in some ways that's actually easy because employment law has really ground into the sludge in time of coronavirus. Not a lot have happened in terms of new developments and so on. Parliament's obviously been rather busy, and the courts and tribunals often been shut down. So there's not a huge amount been happening. So the update will fit in. As ever, I'm reminding you of the SPA Employment Law Hotline. Myself and my colleague Anne-Marie are always here, and many of you take it up, but please keep going. There's an email address specific for you, as you can see on the screen, and there's our number as well. So do please use us as you wish. Just as a flavour of what's been happening and to show you the wide range of use that the hotline has from SPA members, we've had calls recently on a wide variety of the usual stuff. So we've got tribunal claims still going on for all different types. I'll mention that in a minute. Lots of redundancy questions. Now, I don't think any I've spoken to in membership have had to make large numbers of redundancies, but it's 2 or 3 here, or 1 or 2 here. And it's questions around how do you put people in selection pools? Could there be disputes about who should go in a selection pool, and how do you select them, and that sort of thing. And then sometimes there are situations where someone hasn't been performing that well, and they're also sort of redundant, and can you get that into the box of a fair redundancy? So that's been, I have to say, the mainstay, and no one will be falling off your seats in this conference by telling you that redundancies are the mainstay at the moment, and restructures and that sort of things. We have a wide range of disciplinaries, some of them very silly situations, some of them highly amusing, some of them just incredibly stupid. People get themselves caught doing all sorts of silly things, and that continues, and little things, grievances and moans and groans and so on. Current tribunal claims where we're acting for SPA members, we've got a couple of disputed misconduct dismissals, won't surprise you at all, and also one which is relating to a commission pay dispute. Whenever you've got a tribunal claim that may come along, hopefully it's very rare for any of you, do always check us out, even if you don't use us as your main employment law provider. You may find that we can give you a much better service than that you currently use, and as a specialist firm, everything is geared up to these things. So if you happen to use a general full service or a small firm for your day-to-day advice, do come and try us out, because you may find that we're going to give you a much better service. Certainly that's what I would say in any event. So here with today's prettiest picture of a coronavirus, hopefully, what's been happening in pandemic time. Well, you all know about the major changes that actually haven't needed me to explain them to you. The job retention scheme, of course, has been a massive impact and blown a large hole in employment law in the effects it's had. We've now seen the tapering off of that, and of course, as we finish October, we're seeing the tail end of that scheme, with the government contributing just 60% of wages, and they come to the end at the end of October. Then we move on to new things. We've got the job support scheme, which you'll have no doubt heard about ad nauseum, and the job retention bonus scheme, which will kick in for those who qualify, that you pay in February. Now, this is changing. Even a couple of days ago, I saw that the government was changing, and of course, if you're in the north and any of the areas that are further locked down, there could be further support. We really don't know. And just like I think in March, April, and May, things are changing by the 2 or 3 days. So I'm sure you've got your own ways of getting information and updates on these things, and continue to do that. In terms of the biggest theme of more difficult stuff to advise on, it's what came up, I think, in previous calls, if you've been involved in SPA calls on a Friday, whatever. It's the concerns returning to work, uncertainties felt by employees, uncertainties felt by employers, how to get things COVID ready and COVID safe. Obviously, the recent "everyone go back to working at home if you can" message has caused some confusion. And I think we're seeing generally, I imagine you'll agree with me, is that whereas in March and April there was a bit of a Dunkirk spirit and everyone was doing exactly what they're told, nowadays we are starting to be a little more different in our responses, and how much we listen to the government and how much we're prepared to do this or that. So I think it's more complicated than ever as an employer to have clear messages. So work on your comms, make sure your policy is really clear, make sure your managers are all on message as to how your business is dealing with this, who can work at home, who can't, and when you're at work, the strictness with which you comply with the rules. Don't let things slip. Just as a side issue, there's a worrying sort of trend in terms of gender equality reversing. The men are tending to go back to work or keep the jobs, and women are tending to find it more difficult to do that with childcare and other care and so on. We're seeing a case of often women are ending up with the short straw. So if you do have female staff, just bear in mind the impact, and are you treating them as equally as you would the men in terms of opportunity, work, and all that sort of thing. Yeah, redundancies. Just the first thing to say, if the only thing you remember with redundancies is procedure, procedure, procedure. The redundancy procedure will almost always make the process fair. There's ways, if you haven't followed a fair procedure, of still getting out of it if the redundancy itself is reasonable and rational, but the process is king. Plan early, use the helpline or go to your own advisor and make sure that you map out what you need to do if you've got any redundancies, because there's a set piece of things you need to do in the right order, and giving certain information at the right time can either make it a fair redundancy or an unfair. So be really careful with that. Be careful of selecting who you're selecting, how you're going to draw your selection pools, and who's going to go into them and who's not, and what arguments and business cases you're going to have for that. And remember, it's about the role, not the person. I think that's the key thing. It's easy to say, oh, well, we've wanted to get rid of Jim for ages, so here's an opportunity. But you've got to make sure that Jim's job is actually redundant, i.e. you do not need it anymore. And it's the job that's going, not Jim. Very little happened in terms of case reports. As I said, the tribunals have either been swamped with earlier stage work or shut down, or trying desperately to do things on video, or a combination of all three. So there's very little to tell you, nothing of any real import. We mentioned the contract before. Thank you, Tim, for plugging those. Remember that from April, there were certain significant changes to what employment contracts need to have as a minimum. Make sure that if you haven't already, you check out that. If you want any query, if you've got any query on what should be in, just let us know at the helpline, and we'll be delighted to make sure that yours is up to date. Brexit, who knows? Who knows what's going on? No employment law yet has been clear, so we're just going on with steady as she goes, and we'll let you know at the next conference if there's anything that actually is going to change Brexit. But the main message is the same, that employment law is not affected at the moment. So hopefully swift and vaguely on time, Tim. That's the end of your very, very brief update. It's a real pleasure to be part of this conference. It's being run incredibly well by the team. I have to say, I'm so impressed, and I slightly stretched their tolerance recently by coming in late to the session, but it looks like I've been forgiven from the smiles on faces I can see. So that's me. I am done. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for that, Luke. You must have enlightened people, because there were no questions. We have nothing in Q&A, so you are now stood down. Thank you very much, Luke. That was brilliant.
Thank you, folks. Have a good conference.
Thanks, Luke. Okay.